J-Tech Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Bastek and Mike Jacobs.
And welcome in. It's the Game Show Guys with America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they want. I'm Tom Bastek.
And I'm Mike Jacobs. Tom, we are in the double digits now. Episode 10. Can you believe it?
I am a perfect 10, Mike. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, of course. I mean, that's always true. But I'm saying 10 episodes is pretty darn good.
That's not bad. We're in the thousands of listeners. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening in. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give a special shout out to Heather Hurley. She left us a voicemail, which I didn't know was a thing until this happened. But man, she just had nothing but the nicest things to say. And she is a multi-game show winner. Most recently, the top winner for Mental Samurai.
Dude, I've kind of got a little starstruck here.
Yeah,
like the grand champion of Mental Samurai is a fan of the show.
I know. I can't believe it. And it was just such a nice voicemail. We wanted to give a shout out to her. Thank you so much. It really means a lot to us.
And dude, that's your favorite game show, right?
Oh my God, Tom. It happened once with Double Dare, and now all of a sudden everything's my favorite game show.
Well, I mean, it's okay. Everything could be your favorite game show. Although, in all fairness, every time we talk to Christian, it's his favorite game show.
He always has some personal connection to it as well.
He always does. Well, I'm not surprised the man has personal connections to every game show. I have zero problem with that.
No, I mean, it's great for us because he can keep us in line with all the tidbits and news and all that. But yeah.
Speaking of which, if I haven't gotten back to you via email, I'm the one that's kind of responsible for that, and we get a lot. So, guys, thank you for your patience in the replying of the emails that sent to us. But please keep sending to us. We love it.
Absolutely.
All right, Mike, we got a big one this week. It's Supermarket Sweep. Now, this happens to be your wife's favorite game show of all time.
It is. She loves it and is kind of the reason why we're doing it. She's been pitching it since we started doing this podcast. And honestly, it is fun. It's a fun show. I had a lot of fun watching it.
I'm very excited. I was speaking with the folks over at ABC because they're having the reboot that's coming up this fall with Leslie Jones, which obviously we'll talk about in the history. And I asked them, I was like, do you have anything you want to send? Do you want a promo? And they're like, yeah, because the COVID, they're like behind on everything. They're not really pushing anything yet, but they did say mention it, and they'll send us some additional stuff in the fall. And so when we get closer to the actual times and dates, we will talk more about that.
That's great. So we can, revisit it later and have more official press release stuff. That's pretty cool.
All right. Without any further ado, are you ready for the news?
Let's do it.
Light up your cigarette, crack open a beer, put the kiddos to bed. From chaos around the world to carnage in your burial front yard, it's time for the news.
Thank you, guys. This is the news brought to you by BuzzerBlog.com. I'm Christian Carrion. Hollywood and the world at large are both mourning the loss of comedy legend Carl Reiner, who passed away on Tuesday at the age of 98. Reiner had a 60-plus year career in film, on stage, and on television. He was best known as the creator, producer, and writer of the classic Dick Van Dyke Show, as well as Mel Brooks' comedy partner in The 2,000-Year-Old Man, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, several other films. He also had a turn as a game show host, two actually. He hosted a show called Keep Talking on NBC in the late 50s alongside Monty Hall, and he hosted a show called The Celebrity Game. That was on CBS in the mid-'60s. That show featured a panel of 9 celebrities who would agree or disagree with opinion-based statements. And 2 years later, the show's producers retooled the format, combined it with Tic-Tac-Toe, and created Hollywood Squares, which premiered on NBC 2 years after the Celebrity Game.
Wow. So that's where my Hollywood Squares came from.
Those are the very rudimentary origins. And actually, when they first created Hollywood Squares and shot the pilot, CBS said no to it, and they went to NBC and they said yes.
Wow, cool. Totally cool. Yeah, I was very upset that he passed, but then he was like 97 or something.
Yeah.
98, yeah.
That's a good long life, brother. Fantastic job while he was here. We're going to miss him.
It's interesting that the thing that always pops to my head whenever he comes to conversation is the jerk. If you remember that, he leads the lawsuit against Naven for the opti grab that makes people go cross-eyed.
So here's the two things that I most remember him from. Obviously, Dick Van Dyke. The jokes still hold up today, which is
I
amazing.
remember you talking about that the other day.
The second thing is Ocean's 11. Loved him.
Yeah.
All right, what else you got for us, Christian?
Alex Trebek has won his 7th Emmy Award for Outstanding Game Show Host.
Yay!
Yay! He's my favorite, one of my favorites. The longtime host of Jeopardy took home the trophy at the Emmy ceremony Friday night on CBS. Trebek beat nominees including Steve Harvey of Family Feud, Pat Sajak of Wheel of Fortune, Wayne Brady of Let's Make a Deal, and Alfonso Ribeiro Carlton of GSN's Catch 21. Trebek, who was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer late last year and incidentally is the most nominated game show host in Emmy history, has been off the job for some time, with Jeopardy having halted production due to health concerns amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Jeopardy also won the Emmy for Best Game Show, continuing its streak as the winningest game show in Emmy's history. This was the last Emmy for the show under executive producer Harry Friedman, who in August of last year announced his retirement as executive producer, get this, of both Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. He was in charge of both shows for many, many years.
But that guy's got a really big house.
He has to. He's retiring in luxury. Mike Richards, who produced The Price is Right for the past few years, is going to take over as producer of both shows beginning this upcoming season.
Well, all we have to do is find out who's coming back for Alex, and then we're ready to rock and roll for another 25 years.
I have my ideas and I have my nominees, but they're not listening to me.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have their mind made up.
Speaking of Alfonso Ribeiro, doesn't he also hosts America's Funniest Home Videos?
Yeah, he does. And actually, I heard him on. He has some sort of syndicated radio show as well. He plays 90s music like every other
Did he
night.
do a stint on HQ Trivia too?
Oh, wow. I don't know. That sounds up his alley, though, for sure.
Probably. There was a little while where they were doing guest host spots every night. I'm pretty sure he was one of them.
I'm not sure. I actually saw Danny DeVito come in and guest host when he had a movie coming out. I think it was Dumbo was coming out, and he was hysterical. It was great.
Yeah, he's great in everything he does.
All right, anything else, Christian?
Yeah, so according to a post on the fan message board jboard.tv, classic episodes of Jeopardy are returning to the air in the coming weeks. In the absence of new episodes, since production is on hold, the show will be presenting encore airings of episodes, some going all the way back to season 1 in 1984. For example, on July 21st, viewers will see the second ever episode of Trebek's Jeopardy, which is also the first episode to end with no winner.
Wow. I'd love to watch that.
Wait a sec. Wait. Is there something I don't know here? Can it end without a winner?
It can end without a winner. So it happened a couple years ago. I don't know that this particular old episode ended with everybody at 0, but yeah, if all 3 players bet it all at the end and they end with 0, yeah, there's no winner. And then I don't know if they all come back the next day or they have 3 new players, or I'm not sure how that works. But, in the old days when Jeopardy was like on the air in the 60s and 70s, there were a couple times when, you have to have money to go into Final Jeopardy.
Right.
There were a couple of times where all 3 players were in the negative at the end of the second round, so nobody could go to Final Jeopardy. Do you know what they did in that case?
Don't you give them $15 or something like that?
No, they kicked them all off the show, and instead of doing Final Jeopardy, the host used to sing a Broadway show tune. Isn't that insane? So they would say, instead of Final Jeopardy, here's a song from the Fantastics, and he would just belt out a song to fill the last couple minutes.
Oh my God!
Isn't that crazy?
All right, Christian. Any other news? Are we on to the today in game show history? This week in game show history.
Well, this week in game show history, July 7th, 1975, I'm going to talk about the premiere of a show that you guys may not have heard of, and a lot of our listeners may not have heard of. This was a show called The Magnificent Marble Machine. And if you can picture it, The Magnificent Marble Machine was a giant 60-foot-long pinball machine. And there was a simple little game of a sort of word game in front of it, and whoever got 5 points in that game got to play the marble machine. And they had a team of celebrities. So one contestant would be on one flipper, the celebrity would be on the other, and they had 1 minute to slap this giant gold pinball around. They would gather cash and prizes off this pinball machine, and the show lasted for about a season, maybe even a little bit less. But leading up to the premiere, it was so heavily promoted. This was supposed to be the show that was going to be the anchor of the NBC lineup. It was hosted by a guy named Art James, who was on the old Concentration, had hosted a couple of other shows since then. He hosted a show called Say When, which is sort of like a takeoff of The Price is Right, when you had to, like, you know, gather prizes and not go over a certain amount. The show...
He also hosted the fictional Love Connection featured in the movie Mallrats.
Mallrats. Yes, he was in Mallrats. Yep, sure was. The show failed for a couple of reasons. And one, I'm sure Tom can attest to. Playing pinball is fun, but watching pinball is not very fun at all.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a huge pinball fan. I mean, you guys can't see this, but in the room that I do my recording in, there's a pinball machine behind me. I own the Comet. And I'm a gigantic fan, but I don't typically watch other people play unless it's like some sort of a tournament. Then I may watch just to see, but it's more of like hoping they'll screw up as opposed to like rooting for them. So yeah, I don't see the appeal to this at all. When I have watched an episode of it, and I don't remember because I was way too young when it came out, like one, but it's a train wreck. It's terrible.
It is. It's the kind of thing that's interesting to watch for a few minutes, but then you realize they're doing this Monday through Friday every week. And it's how, you know, all the reasons that the show failed really are centered around the fact that it's just kind of boring. I mean, it's not fun to watch. It's not fun to watch people play pinball. It's even less fun to watch people play pinball on a giant machine. And anyone who's played, I got to play the Hercules machine by Atari from the 70s, which was like 8 feet long. It's really slow. The ball is really heavy. So there's not a lot of that fast action that you expect from a decent sized pinball machine. The ball and marble machine weighed about 15 to 20 pounds.
That's like playing with a bowling ball.
It's exactly like playing with a bowling ball. So it just was not fun to watch, and as a result, it was canceled. But magnificent marble machine, an interesting footnote in obscure game show history.
I will say the one appeal that this show had is aesthetics. Like, the intro is awesome, and the set is incredible. Like, if you are into retro design, go check out this show. Like, it is trippy as all get out, and just I thought it was really cool.
I will say,
you got like the 70s chroma key technology, and you got like the synthesizer music. Yeah, it's a trip and a half.
I will say it's nice that they spent the money and built a 60-foot foot pinball machine. That's great.
Yeah, when you described the Hercules game, I immediately was like, oh, I absolutely understand the problem here, because that game is not fun at all.
It's really cool to look at. I got to play it at MagFest a few months ago. But yeah, it's just really not fun because it's so slow and so cumbersome.
Yeah.
Well, Christian, this week we've got Mike's wife's favorite game show, Supermarket Sweep. That's what we're showcasing.
One of my favorites, and I was describing this earlier. That is a game show for me that just it's just such a moment in time, because I remember watching it when I was younger. I remember the time that it came on. It was just the whole family was home. My dad was home from work. My mom was making dinner. I could like smell the chicken parm that she was making while that show was on. It just holds so many memories for me. One fun fact that I do have about this show, if I could quickly share it with you guys.
Sure.
So this show, and by the way, I own a flag from Supermarket Sweep from the original one in the 60s. It was a bonus flag. I do. I'll find a picture and show it to you guys, but I have it somewhere in my archives. I do own one. When this show first was devised in the 60s, they had to shoot a pilot, to show the network how it was going to work. So they shot a pilot, and people were not used to running around for a game show. Back then in the 60s, it was a lot of word games and quiz games and things. So an action-based show was not very common. One of the contestants ran so much and got so excited that he had a heart attack in the aisle on the pilot of Supermarket Sweep.
No
And
way.
he didn't die, but he had a heart attack just as a result of all the energy and the running that he had to do.
My God.
It's a great way to advertise your show, though.
Oh, I'm telling you, I as dark as it is, I'm sure they looked at it like, holy God, look at what our game did to this man.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, when they redid the show in the 90s, again, they had to shoot a pilot for that, and they used an actual supermarket. See, on the show, it was a set that looked like a supermarket.
Right.
But they used an actual supermarket for the pilot. So as a result, people were grabbing like condoms and batteries and baby formula, and they couldn't show that, obviously, so they had to edit all that out. But yeah, people were grabbing like actual hardcore grocery items. So if you were a contestant on the show, they would lead you into the studio. You got a few minutes to walk around. And then for every episode, they would do the front part, the part where you have to guess the prices and fill in the blanks and all that. They would knock all of those out one at a time. And then they would do all the actual sweep portions one after the other.
Oh.
So when you're seeing an episode of Supermarket Sweep, you're seeing them recording the game, and then the sweep thing happens like hours later after everybody's played their front part of the game.
I have a feeling that Floor is Lava is done somewhat like that.
That show is awesome. I forgot about the Floor is Lava.
Yeah. I've watched almost all of them, I think, now. And I think they just shoot a whole bunch of them and then piece them together as they need to make the season like pan out right with numbers and all that. And I think my guess is that they shoot a victory scene for everybody that plays, and then they just air the one of the team that wins based on how they pair everybody up.
Oh, that has to be how they do it. I mean, they do that with a lot of shows. Even The Apprentice, back in the day when you used to be fired or whatever, they, like, the first day of shooting, they would just record everybody walking out of the building as if they got fired, just so they have that footage in case they need it.
Gotcha.
Floor is Lava, I kind of like. I've watched 2 episodes of it now. I'm not sure if I'm on board yet. I got to get a few more in.
It's definitely fun to watch. I have yet to, like, binge watch it yet. I've seen an episode here and there. I like the idea. It's that sort of kids game, like, elevated to like TV proportions. But I don't know. I think it's fun, but I will reserve full judgment until I see more of it.
Sure.
I've been enjoying it. I will say it's not like life changing or oh my god, it's the best thing in the world, but it's fun.
All right, Christian, quick plug for Buzzer Blog, if you'd please.
Of course, buzzerblog.com, the #1 game show website in the world, the #1 destination for game show and unscripted television news, reviews. If you're an industry insider, a casual fan, or a hardcore viewer like me or Tom or Mike, buzzerblog.com is the place to go. That is buzzerblog.com.
All right, Mike. First of all, thanks, obviously, Christian, for that. I may put this out to our listeners here. Why is there no "the" in the Floor is Lava? This is a question you posed to me that I did not have an answer for.
It doesn't make sense. And throughout the show, they say the floor is lava, like when they do the announcement at the beginning of the show or the run or whatever. But very clearly, like, there is not a "the" in the title. And anytime the host says it as the title of the show, he just says floor is lava. And I don't understand, like, it feels more correct to say the floor is lava. Is it a trademarked name? I know there are like games that have been released with that name, but there's no way that the difference of having "the" in there is what makes it trademark.
I don't know. Maybe that's the only way they could use it was if they didn't use the word "the."
Right. I don't know. It's a mystery to me, but if anybody knows, I would love to have an answer to that.
All right, when we come back, we're going to get into the gameplay of this week's featured show, which is not Floor is Lava.
No, it is not.
Although that would make it for a very interesting supermarket sweep if the floor was lava.
They would not make it very far. I'd say that because the majority of the set is floor. So,
but it would be fun watching them climb from shelf to shelf.
Yeah. Ooh, fun thing that I learned: if Floor is Lava was done with real lava, it would not work because the room would be too hot for a human to survive for more than a couple seconds.
Okay.
So there you go.
Great.
Just so you know.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they want. And if you know that music, you know that we are back on America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they won. It is Supermarket Sweep time.
It is. Supermarket Sweep. What a man. I don't know. It's such a fun show, but it's also such a budget show, I guess.
I have mixed feelings on this, and as we get into it, you'll hear my gripes.
Yeah, and I will probably agree with them. But yeah, let's talk about the gameplay first.
Okay.
So there are two different versions of this show. Initially, when it was on ABC, it was basically a pricing game.
And that was back in the 60s, right, Mike?
Correct. Yeah, we'll talk about more of that in the history. But yeah, in the 60s is when it initially started. And you'd have, like in the versions that happened later, 3 teams of 2 contestants. That was always sort of the standard. But yeah, it would basically be a series of pricing games. An item would come out and everybody would say how much they thought it was, and whoever gets the closest adds to the time. You start with 1.5 minutes, and you add more time to your bank as you guess these items. It's basically Price is Right. They don't have the without going over rule. But that's all it is. It's just pricing game, and then however much time you get, you then go and do the sweep version where you just try and get as much money in groceries as possible and picking up some bonus items along the way. Not a whole lot to it. And then later, it became what we more understand today, the 90s version that aired on Lifetime, which to me is the more recognizable version for sure. That's when it was really fleshed out into more of a fuller game show. In this one, we started off with the question round where they answer trivia questions. And again, you start with 1.30 minutes in your bank, and you try and get more time by answering trivia questions. Most of these questions were typically about products or led you to name a product, but they would also every now and then sprinkle in like pop culture questions, movies, TV shows, I guess to try and mix it up a little bit so it wasn't just about grocery store stuff. But the questions were not terribly difficult.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I want to go back for a sec, Mike, but I want to say first, yeah, the questions were really easy. I watched a couple episodes and I knew almost every single answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it was.
Yeah. They wanted you to win. They really did.
Yep.
I think the fun of this was getting to the supermarket sweep part, but I want to go back to how the guests were picked.
Oh,
and
right.
They were called down from the audience, like Price is Right style. Like, if you had said, come on down, it was Price is Right. And the sad part was the way they did it is they had a product, like so somebody who'd paid for product placement. So like whoever's holding the juicy juice, come on down. Now they didn't say come on down,
right?
But that's how they called. Well, these people were all picked ahead of time.
Absolutely.
So even though everybody in the audience had a name tag on, only 3 couples actually had products in their hands, and you could clearly see that on television.
And they show the audience every time, and it's like, you know, you can't necessarily see that nobody else has items, but you're like, there's a lot of people that don't have anything in their hands.
Yeah. And so then they would say, so that's a total ripoff there, and it's a terrible product placement. You'd been better off saying the Juicy Juice team 1 is Bob and Fran, and here they come. You know what I'm saying? That sort of
Exactly. I don't understand why they had to do that. Like, I guess just to make it seem more exciting or something, or more accessible to anyone that showed up. But
honestly, I think they were trying to rip off. They were going with what works on Price is Right.
Yeah, you're right.
Price is Right had been out with Bob Barker for what, 25 years at that point, or 20 years at that point?
Yeah, I mean, by the Lifetime version, 1990. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I wasn't pleased about either one of those things. But yeah, getting back to the questions, super easy. The one thing I did like was that they had really mixed up the way they did it. They would do like fill in the blanks, kind of like Hangman, with brand names and stuff. So there was different questions, and then they would have even, and I think you'll get to this, the pre-sweep thing, whatever they called it.
Yeah, the mini sweep.
Right. But talk about that. But I enjoyed that. I just thought they changed up the type of questions that you would normally get.
Yeah.
The 3 or 4 different types, and for that variety, I love it.
I absolutely agree with you there. the variety of I guess formatting of the questions. The content of the questions themselves was nothing to write home about, but the way they formatted it and presented it, I agree was really a high point of the show. So the mini sweep was when they would do a toss-up question, like you say, they fill in the blank with a product name, and then when the contestant buzzes in and gets it right, their teammate then has to go into the market and find a specifically marked, not copy, but whatever. The one package of that product is marked with the Supermarket Suite logo, and they have to bring it back and obviously, earn more bonus by doing so. So over the course of the question round, as I said, you are adding time into your bank for the big sweep, what they referred to. And this is when one contestant from each team has the amount of time that they have banked to run through the grocery store and fill carts as much as possible to earn the money that those items cost, MSRP. And there's also bonus items, oversized things. Typically, like one I saw was a giant package of Oreos. Sometimes it was a very specific item or something that would maybe take up some more time to get. Like you had to grind up a bag of coffee, or one was soft serve, but in a specific like layered flavor or order. So yeah, just a couple different things like that to get bonus points. And at the end of that, whoever has the most value of goods in their cart with the bonus items taken into account wins the show and gets to go on to the bonus round. The bonus sweep, as it were. There are a couple different rules of the big sweep that limit, I suppose, how you can game it. And the big one is that you can only have 5 of any given item. So it's not like you could just run to the lobster section that are, super expensive lobster tails and get 20 of those and be done with it. Limit of 5. They also had a thing where any dropped item had to be either picked up and put back on the shelf or into your cart if you still had room for it. But yeah, if you just left something on the floor, that was a penalty against you, and you would actually lose, I believe it was $25 for something just being left on the floor. And then finally, the second contestant has to remain at the checkout the whole time. They have an additional empty cart, and so at any time they could run back and swap out the carts, and then the contestant at the checkout could then empty that cart. So you could theoretically get multiple carts emptied. I don't know that I've ever seen it happen that much. But they typically will get both carts pretty full.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, too, they would have different inflatable bonus items throughout the store, or like cardboard cutouts. Like the one episode I saw had a cardboard cutout of Orville Redenbacher.
Nice.
And that was one of the bonus items.
Yeah. And the thing is, with those bonus items, you do have to have it in your cart and get it to the checkout. Like it counts as any other piece of grocery. So something like that, you got to make room in your cart for.
Yeah, and I think they were a little bit more lax on some of that stuff. Like at one point, I saw a boat, like an inflatable boat, like a rowboat kind of thing.
Oh wow!
And you weren't getting that in the thing. They were just carrying it along.
Okay, all right.
And they had to carry it and hand it off to their guys. So I mean, I think there was they took a little liberties with this. You also couldn't crash into people.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
If you crashed into a cameraman or another contestant, you could be fined. You could be fined for each time you did that.
And at some point, I believe it was early in the 90s version, they would have costumed characters in the aisle that you had to avoid as well. And so it was like, and it wasn't like if you accidentally bump into him. It's like if you go down an aisle, there's Frankenstein. It's like you got to turn around and head the other way because Frankenstein's going to try and run into you.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's absolutely. I heard a lot of people, reading online, a lot of people complain that it was a very small store. But I have to tell you, it was as big as an IGA or a Walgreens. It wasn't teeny tiny.
It is larger than your average Trader Joe's.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, it's funny because Guy's Grocery Games actually has a 15,000 square foot space that they shoot in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Guy's Grocery Games is a pretty big set. Yeah, I believe this one was, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe the average Trader Joe's is 13,000 square feet, and this set was 13,500.
There you go.
And so, you got to figure in a Trader Joe's, there's a lot of, the back of the store that you don't see. But that's also true in the set. There's a lot of behind the camera stuff that you don't see. So, I'd say it's more or less accurate to say it's about the size of a Trader Joe's, which is, it's not the biggest grocery store in the world, but it's sizable.
Right. And then the bonus sweep.
Yeah, the bonus sweep. So you have... the idea is there's a series of clues leading you to get 3 specific items in a specific order. And
Mike?
Yes.
Mike, let's take it again. We never said that whoever got the most money, like all the money would get checked out, that made it to the bonus sweep. My bad.
Oh, no, I think I said that. Well,
Did you?
we
Did
can,
you say it?
we can do it again.
Do it again. I'll cut it out if we need to.
Okay. And so at the end of the big sweep, whichever team comes back to their checkout with the most value of goods in their cart with their bonus items taken into account will be considered the winner and move on to the final bonus sweep at the end of the game.
All right, so that bonus sweep, go ahead.
Yep, the bonus sweep consists of clues leading you to 3 specific items in the store. It's like a scavenger hunt, basically. And so the host will read the first clue, and you have 60 seconds to go find those 3 items. Obviously the clue that the host reads leads you to the first item that then has the clue to the second, which then finally has the clue to the third. If you manage to get all 3 of those items, you're going to get $5,000. If not, you get If not, you get $200 for each item that you found. So that's a pretty big discrepancy. So it really pays off to get all 3. It seemed really difficult to me. Like, I was doing really well with the rest of the show, but following these clues, sometimes they were brand names I'd never even heard of. And so it's like you're trying to find a rhyme for something, and it's like, you don't even know where to start. It's just, I was not doing well at it playing at home.
I only watched one final sweep, and I got the first 2 clues. The third clue I did not get at all.
And I think a lot of that maybe also has to do with time. Like, products are not maybe as prominent as they once were, or maybe don't even exist anymore, things like that.
Interestingly enough, in terms of like the losers of the show, their consolation prizes were awful.
Oh, I have no doubt. The budget of this show could not have been very big.
They would put on the numbered sweaters or sweatshirts. I'm sorry.
Sure.
With the Dickies that made them look like they had a white collared shirt on underneath.
Yeah.
I don't know who did the costume design for this one, but awful. But anyway, the losers got to keep their sweatshirts. The winners did not. So basically, you are reusing sweatshirts from other people that have been running around putting spoiled meat on them.
Well, but it would be your own sweater, right? Because when you win, you get to come back.
If you win, you come back, correct. But when you chose that sweatshirt to begin with, it may have been used before.
Well, no, because
No, Mike, they had 12 different colors of sweatshirts. You get yellow, your team, my team gets red. I lose. The red ones go with me and they leave. The yellow ones
stay with the winners because they come back next week, and then those yellow ones lose next week and they take their sweaters home.
They don't. They turn them back in because they've won profits. If they won anything, they didn't get to keep the sweaters.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So even once
they go back on the
initially
rack.
Eliminated, they don't keep their sweaters.
Correct.
Okay.
In other words, you leave with no money, you keep the sweaters, the sweatshirts. If you leave with anything, you turn the sweatshirts back in.
Gross.
And the Dickies were all reused too.
Gross.
You betcha.
Yeah. Well, and because that's the thing is they used real food. Apparently, it ended up being cheaper to use real food than fake food or plastic food. So yeah, there were like hot dogs sitting around for weeks.
Oh yeah, and I read something about that. They would be like they'd be fermenting and blowing up in the packages.
I worked in a grocery store, and I remember seeing specifically fermenting deli ham. And like, watch out for this if you're ever at the grocery store. But the package will be like inflated, like a balloon. You know how it comes in that shrink wrap or whatever. and that means that the meat has gone bad. If you open one of those, I mean, it's like opening a casket. The smell is just awful, and I have to imagine that's just what the set of Supermarket Sweep smelled like all the time. We talked about Double Dare being gross. I have to imagine Supermarket Sweep was worse.
You know, back in the old days, in the original one in the 1960s, you used to get to keep the food that you won.
Yeah,
and
that's not good.
Obviously, well, that was also shot in a real grocery store. Speaking of which, we'll talk more about that, I guess. Yeah, we'll talk more about that in the history, which we should take a break now and come back and do that.
Awesome, let's do it.
All right, you've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. And welcome back. We are in segment number 3 of episode number 10, double digits this week. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they won. The game show guys, Tom Bastek,
Mike Jacobs. This week we are talking about Supermarket Sweep, which we've talked about this earlier. Christian mentioned it, that there's a lot of nostalgia and like sort of down home feeling to this show. But what a lot of people don't know is that the version that they're very nostalgic for is not the original for Supermarket Sweep. We talked about this earlier, but it started actually on ABC back in 1965.
Hey, let me ask you a question, Mike.
Sure.
I mean, it's interesting that they would take something that not a lot of people like to shop. I love to shop, but I'm one of the few, I think. And they take something that people hate to do typically and make it something fun.
That's a good point. I had not really considered that. I think maybe it has to do with like proving that you're good at it. Like taking this thing, like it sucks, but at least I can do it well. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I just, all I know is that if I had to ask my wife, who was not like shopping at all, to be on any game show, she's not picking a game show where she has to shop.
That's a good point. I think maybe it's, you're not spending your own money. You're not actually spending money at all. You're winning money. So that's probably a huge part of what makes shopping suck, is at the end of it, you're like, oh, cool, I just spent a bunch of money on stuff that's going to be poop in 2 weeks.
You know, I don't really think of it that way, but you're right.
You're really just renting it.
Yeah, I might as well just, for not even, just eliminate the middleman, throw it right in the toilet.
Yep.
All right. So ABC, December 20, 1965.
1965 is when it began. It was hosted by a man named Bill Malone, who I will be fully honest, I know nothing about him. But the cool thing about the original show is that it was actually shot in real grocery stores. The grocery store chain was called Food Fair. It was mostly in New York, but it was kind of pitched as we can show up to your town and you can go wild in your local grocery store. And maybe, it could be even an advantage to someone who's from that town, being like, oh, I know this grocery store. I know exactly where the Worcestershire sauce is or whatever. I think that was a really cool aspect of it that you lose in the later episodes. But I guess it's really hard to find anything about this version of it. There's some episodes on YouTube here and there, but it's just not terribly interesting, and I guess it just didn't do that well. It ran for 2 years, which I suppose isn't that bad, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a pretty short run for a game show. It wasn't even a full 2 years. But then in 1990, that's when it began on Lifetime Network, and this is more than likely the version that everybody is familiar with. David Ruprecht.
I think this is where the nostalgia really comes from here.
Absolutely. David Ruprecht is the host. Johnny Gilbert as the announcer. Johnny Gilbert, of course, everybody knows. I mean, most famously for announcing Jeopardy. But the play-by-plays that he does for the sweeps in this show, they're just so endearing. I love them so much.
I'm just impressed because you don't hear him talk that much, like on Jeopardy or whatnot, and to hear him do like the whole thing, you're like, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, it's very clearly done in post-production, and I'm sure he has writers that write it all for him, but he's just so good at it, and he's adorable, and I love it. It's very heartwarming. And again, maybe that's a nostalgia thing, but it's just a lot of fun hearing him do those. David Ruprecht, I dove into him a little bit last night. He's had a whole bunch of bit parts here and there on TV shows and movies and whatnot. Not a huge career, but respectable. The one thing I found that really stood out to me, and I actually ended up watching this movie last night, much to my dismay, but he was the announcer of the English language version of the movie Ultraman X the movie. Here it comes, our Ultraman. I don't know if you're familiar with Ultraman at all. He's been around forever. It's like it's a Japanese series of kaiju films, kaiju being like Godzilla type monsters. And he's a giant like robot man that fights them and saves the earth. He's been around forever. There was a Super Nintendo game at one point. I'm sure there's tons of games over the course of the years. Anyways, so yeah, that kind of sparked a nostalgia for me. So I went and tracked that movie down, and I don't recommend it. It's not very good.
And that's all we need to know about that.
Yeah. So with this new version on Lifetime, the show is no longer shot in the food fair. It is on a stage in Hollywood, modeled to look like a grocery store. We'd mentioned this earlier with Christian about what store it was modeled after, and he said an obscure southern store. Apparently it was Southern California, so that's outside my purview, being a lifelong Georgian.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't remember Hughes Family Market anywhere in the Northeast at all.
Yeah, I don't know that one at all. Hughes Family Market was the name of the store. It was later absorbed into the larger Ralph's chain, which again, I'm not from California, so I've never been to a Ralph's, but I've definitely heard that name, and that's a pretty big chain over on the West Coast, from what I understand. But I'm sure when it was Ralph's, it no longer looked like a Hughes Family Market. And this version is like we said, probably the one that everybody's most familiar with. It ran for 5 years, which is a pretty good run, ending in 1995. But then picked back up not too long later in 2000. PAX Network picked it back up again with, Dave Ruprecht and Johnny Gilbert retaking the roles as host and announcer, respectively. But Gilbert did not stay around for long. He left that year and then was replaced by a gentleman named Randy West. So then this run on PAX ran for another 3 years, ended on May 23rd, 2003. That was our final episode of Supermarket Sweep. Ended with a total of 1,111 episodes, which I think is a pretty nice number to end on. But as Christian has mentioned in our news segments in the past, it is coming back. It's going to be on ABC. They've already begun filming. Leslie Jones is the new host. I'm super excited. I love her and cannot wait to see her host a show. They may have already be done filming. They started in spring and we're now pretty far into the summer, so I can't imagine it takes too long to film a season of a game show, but we should be on the lookout for that pretty soon. That's exciting.
Yeah, that's been in development since 2017. It's interesting that that it's taken as long as it has, but I'm glad it has. I'm excited for it to come back, and I am a fan of Leslie Jones. She's the one that gave me hope because she made it onto like Saturday Night Live at like age 45. God bless her.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, and what I'm excited about is that I feel that the main thing this show suffers from is lack of budget and therefore a lack of professionalism, maybe is the term. I've been trying to put my finger on it. We've been talking about this all day and I can't put my finger on it. But I think coming back to ABC with a larger budget is going to give the show the boost it needs to really be a good game show, because I think that the concept of making shopping fun, and obviously it's a popular show. It's been around forever and it keeps going. It's obviously very influential because we have Guys Grocery Games. That's, basically the same show, and that's succeeding. I want to see it given a real shot to be what I think it could be. I think it could be a lot of fun.
So we don't know a lot about what it's going to be. They've said, some little things about, it's going to be a modern kind of grocery, but with a callback to the past. But I mean, what would you do differently if you were running it? Like if you were setting it up, like here you go, you're in charge of Supermarket Sweep, Mike. What are you doing?
I mean, I guess I'm gonna make it basically like the Lifetime version, and I think part of that is nostalgia, but there's also, I think, a good variety of stuff. Like we talked about, the way that they pitch questions would be different. I think I would maybe even do less pop culture and make it all product focused. I have a board game called Logo that's all, product trivia questions, and it's kind of like this in that they're presented in sort of different, unique ways, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's just interesting how product placement and advertising can really stick in your head and become a category of trivia without you even really trying. And I think there's a certain amount of enjoyment in being like, oh man, I know that, and I didn't even know I knew that. Or someone sings a jingle, or like just the way that it, like I said, becomes a trivia category without noticing, I think is a very interesting aspect.
To me, I'd like to do something with the sweep part of it. I wanna do more with the sweep. I don't know how we accentuate that or make it better than it was, but I feel like also there's like a certain level of, like, I would love to say certain things are like off limits, or like you're not going to find these items in the store. So now you really need to know your prices, because it's super easy to go to the beef section and take 10 canned hams and throw them in your cart, or 5 canned hams, throw them in your cart.
What if you did a cross with Cutthroat Kitchen, and there's some sort of like aspect where you can get things that harm other people in their sweep, or give you a little bonus or something like that?
I could definitely see that being an awesome way to do it. The other thing is that I wish they had done a version of this for kids, where it's like you were getting time to like run through a KB Toy Stores or a Toys R Us. Man, it would be amazing.
Well, and there are some things that are similar. There's not a specific game show that is, Supermarket Sweep for kids, but there was a mail-in contest that Nickelodeon used to have back when I was a kid, where you would get, you just mail in a postcard, self-addressed stamped envelope, actually, and you would enter in, and you get, I don't know 5 minutes, something like that, but they would close down a Toys R Us, and you would get a shopping cart, and you could just run through and fill up your shopping cart as much as you wanted. Like I said, it's not a game show, but it was a contest you could win. I entered that every time it came up, and of course never won.
Oh my God.
Where
would you go in Toys R Us?
Oh, where would I go? I would.
Yeah, where would you go?
Well, when I was a kid, this was when NES was, the new hot thing. My plan was you run to the NES section and grab as many of the consoles and games as you can, and then sell off all the extras. And that to me, it was like, I don't even care about the rest. Like, maybe I'd get a bike if I had time, but no, I'm just going to go load up on as many Nintendo games as I possibly can.
I'm going one place only. You want to guess?
Star Trek figures.
Legos,
of course. How did I not know that?
I'm going straight to the Lego section. If it's back in the day of when we were being raised, I'm grabbing all the space Legos I can possibly put my hands on, and then the second I'm grabbing city sets after that. But if it's in today's day and age, I'm probably going for the electronics, because the truth is that I'm not crazy about a lot of the Legos that are out today, and I know those electronics are worth so much money that I could sell them all off and go buy what I wanted.
I'd try and get the Lego Death Star.
If they had it and it was in a box that could be put into your box.
Yep.
Remember, Toys R Us was notorious for never putting anything expensive out there. They just had packets of tickets that you had to take to the front desk and then take it and get them to where they bring it out back.
Crap, I 100% forgot about that until just now. Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Thank you for that memory.
Yeah, it was one of those things, like you couldn't get, like, we had a video game booth that I worked at Toys R Us for a period of time, but like you just went and got the slips for all the video games you wanted, and then after you checked out, you went to the video game booth with your receipt, and they stamped it and took the slip and got you, Pitfall or whatever.
Well, I was gonna say, I very distinctly remember getting Super Mario Brothers 3 that way. Also, there was a different game show way back in the day. It was called Video Power, a video game themed game show. And the end round of this was sort of a supermarket sweep for kids. It was almost like the Double Dare final obstacle course, but the kids would wear these Velcro vests. And along the obstacle course, there were various video games and systems and gift certificates and things like that, like stuck all over the place. And you would have to pull them off the wall and stick them on your Velcro vest. And at the end of the obstacle course, you get to keep whatever's still stuck to you. And I remember watching that thinking like, man, that was the pinnacle of final rounds for me.
I remember the Velcro and the sticking, and without you mentioning it, I would not have known where I remember that from or how. But I'm now going to have to go down that rabbit hole of checking it out because of the fact that, to me, that rings a little bit of a bell. And why did I not watch more of that?
we can dive into it more later. It was one of my favorite shows as a kid.
You know what was crazy, Mike, is that I don't know how this even happened, but they didn't sell this thing as a season. So when you got on the show, you might not have even had, it may not have aired. You might not have gotten paid. So you could have won the whole thing, which, by the way, the prizes were not all that much money to begin with. I mean, like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 is all you were winning, really.
Sure.
But if your show never aired, they didn't have to pay you.
So what, they just filmed a bunch of extra episodes or something? That's weird.
They would film episodes, and then they would go out and try to sell them. And if they couldn't sell them, you didn't get paid because it didn't air.
Weird. What a bizarre way to go about it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody gets a chance to sell anything piecemeal anymore like that. And I also don't think, I mean, as you said, it wasn't a lot of money that was being put out, but I don't think production companies would spend not knowing that they have money coming in.
Yeah, I guess not.
Okay, Mike, we're running out of time. It is time to do our ratings for this show today.
Yeah, I vote we do it out of 5 grocery carts, I guess.
Okay, so five shopping carts.
Yeah, I'm torn because, like I said, it's a lot of fun. I love the game. I think it's really hurt by the production, and I hope ABC can turn that around. I'm going to have to go a 3 and maybe reserve a empty 0.5 at the end that I may fill in depending on how ABC handles it. I think as of right now, I'm a 3, but I could be very easily swayed to go higher.
All right, I'm going to give it a 2, only because I feel like it ripped off Price is Right in the beginning. And it was a pricing game, a lot like Price is Right, in terms of like a lot of questions were about pricing. Like not just, you know, I mean, in the early one, but in the second one, it was all grocery stuff. And I was like, well, gosh, that's exactly what Price is Right is doing. Except I guess Price is Right is concentrating more on actual prices, where, as you know, this was more like brands and brand names and things. But still, to me, it just felt eerily similar.
You're not wrong about that. It is very clearly heavily influenced by The Price is Right.
I just think they could have done the product placements a lot better. I think that they got lazy, and I definitely think that they tried to ramp it up and make it a lot like Price is Right when they didn't need to do that.
I do not disagree with you at all.
All right, Mike, that's all the time we have for today.
As always, a special thank you to Christian, folks at BuzzerBlog, and everyone who listens and writes us and leaves us voicemails and contacts us however you see fit.
Yes, tune in again next time when we bring you the latest and greatest in the world of game shows, as well as our brand new featured show next week, too.
And remember to catch us online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course at tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
Please subscribe, share, like, and drop a review if you like what you heard.
And if you didn't like it, just wait for the beep.
Mike, shouldn't it be this beep?
Well, I suppose that all depends on the context, doesn't it?
I guess it does. All right, Mike, we'll see you next week.
Bye, Tom!
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, a JTech audio production, copyright 2020. No part of this podcast may be reproduced by anyone without the express written consent of the creators. For more information or to contact us, please go to tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com. All right, Mike, what did you learn this week?
Well, I don't know exactly what it means, but I feel like it says something about society when it's cheaper to use real meat and just toss it away than it is to just get plastic meat that you can reuse.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know if that's a sad thing or a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, on one side, I guess it means that food is readily available at affordable prices, but on the other side, how much food did they waste for this show?
So what I learned is that you got to read the rules before you go, because you might end up with somebody's stanky sweatshirt, and you may not get paid if it never airs.
Yeah, I can only imagine having to get on that show, and your only prize is here's someone's old dirty sweatshirt with rotten hot dog meat on it.
Blah.
Ugh.
Copyright 2020, a JTech audio production.